Picture this: 58 BC, inside the marble halls of the Roman Senate. A general stands at the podium, bronze armour still stained with foreign blood. In his hand he holds a severed head. The skin is pale, the beard braided with silver rings, the eyes still frozen in an expression that makes the senators uncomfortable. It's a Celtic chieftain who dared to laugh when Caesar demanded submission. The general expects applause. He expects triumph. Instead, the chamber falls silent. Because in those dead eyes the senators see something that terrifies the most powerful empire on earth. Defiance that didn't die with a body. This wasn't the beginning of Rome's conquest of the Celts. This was the beginning of Rome's education in what happens when you mistake savagery for weakness. For 2 centuries Rome had been unstoppable. They crushed Carthage. They humiliated Greece. They turned the Mediterranean into a Roman lake. Every enemy bent the knee or was ground into dust. The pattern was predictable. Roman discipline beats foreign chaos. Roman steel cuts through barbarian rage, every single time. Then they looked north, across the Alps, into the endless forests of Gaul and Britannia. The Celts controlled everything from the Atlantic to the Black Sea. Millions of them, hundreds of tribes, warriors who fought naked to prove they feared nothing, not even death. Priests who could predict the future in the entrails of their enemies. A culture older than Rome itself. The Romans saw primitive tribalism, disorganized villages, people who couldn't even build proper roads. They thought these barbarians would fall like all the others. A few campaigns, a few battles, then peace. They were catastrophically wrong. The forests would drink Roman blood for the next 300 years. 52 BC. Julius Caesar has been conquering Gaul for 6 years. 6 bloody, brutal years of subjugation. He's written home about his victories, his genius, his manifest destiny. Back in Rome, they're already planning his triumph. The Senate is debating what statues to build in his honour. Then a 30-year-old Gallic nobleman does something that should have been impossible. Vercingetorix, chieftain of the Arverni tribe, stands before a gathering of Celtic leaders. These are men whose fathers killed each other, whose grandfathers burned each other's villages, tribes that have been enemies for generations, feuding over cattle, over insults, over pride. Vercingetorix tells them to stop. He doesn't ask, he doesn't beg, he commands. He reminds them that while they've been slaughtering each other, Rome has been picking them off one by one. He tells them that Caesar sees them as animals to be tamed, that their children will speak Latin, that their gods will be forgotten. One by one, the chieftains stand, the Carnutes, the Senones, the Parisii. Dozens of tribes that have hated each other for centuries suddenly find a common enemy. Caesar reads the intelligence reports in his winter camp and does something his officers have never seen before. His hand trembles. Vercingetorix doesn't fight like a barbarian. He fights like a Roman. He trains his warriors in formation tactics. He refuses to give Caesar the pitched battle the legions are designed to win. Instead, he burns his own cities. He destroys his own crops. He turns Gaul into a wasteland. The strategy is called Scorched Earth, and it's driving Caesar insane. When Caesar marches, he finds ashes. When he camps, his supply lines are cut. When he attacks, the Gauls vanish into the forests like smoke. At Gergovia, Vercingetorix does the unthinkable. He defeats Caesar in open battle. The great Julius Caesar, conqueror of nations, is forced to retreat with his legions bloodied and demoralized. It's his first major defeat in Gaul. For a brief, shining moment, it looks like the impossible might happen. Gaul might actually win. But Caesar is not just a general. He's a gambler who understands that in war, one perfect move can erase 1,000 mistakes. He traps Vercingetorix at Alesia, surrounds the city with walls, then surrounds those walls with more walls when Gallic reinforcements arrive. It's the most audacious siege in military history. Vercingetorix is starving inside. Caesar is surrounded outside. Whoever breaks first loses everything. The Gallic relief army attacks. 80,000 warriors slam into Caesar's fortifications in a last desperate attempt to save their leader. The battle rages for days. The slaughter is apocalyptic. When the dust settles, the relief army is scattered. Vercingetorix stands on the walls of Alesia and watches his last hope disappear into the forests. He makes a choice that will haunt Roman nightmares for centuries. He surrenders. He rides out of Alesia alone, dressed in his finest armour, and kneels before Caesar. He offers himself in exchange for the lives of his people. Caesar accepts. He chains Vercingetorix like a dog and drags him back to Rome. For 6 years, the man who unified Gaul rots in a cell beneath the city. Then, during Caesar's triumph, he's paraded through the streets and strangled to death for the entertainment of the crowds. Rome thinks the lesson is clear: resist and die. But 8 years later, on a cold morning in 60 AD, a Roman procurator named Catus Decianus is about to learn that some lessons don't take. King Prasutagus of the Iceni tribe has just died. He was a client king, a Celtic noble who played by Roman rules. In his will, he splits his kingdom between his daughters and Emperor Nero, hoping this compromise will protect his family. The Romans read the will and laugh. Catus Decianus arrives with soldiers. They don't negotiate. They seize the entire kingdom as property of Rome. When Prasutagus's widow, Queen Boudica, protests, they strip her in front of her people and whip her until her back is raw meat. Her daughters? The soldiers drag them away. What happens next is too brutal for the chroniclers to describe in detail, but the word they use is outrage. The Romans thought they were putting a widow in her place. Instead, they created the most dangerous woman in the empire. Boudica doesn't grieve, she mobilizes. Within weeks, she's united the Iceni with the Trinovantes and a dozen other tribes that are sick of Roman taxes, Roman arrogance, and Roman cruelty. This isn't a raid. This isn't a border skirmish. This is an eruption of pure, concentrated rage. Her first target is Caledonium, modern-day Colchester, the shining jewel of Roman Britain. It's a city of marble temples, veteran settlements, and that most hated symbol of occupation. A massive temple to the deified Emperor Claudius. The city has almost no garrison. The Romans have grown comfortable, lazy. Boudica's army descends on Camalodunum like a tidal wave. They don't just conquer it, they erase it. Every building is burned, every Roman is killed. The temple to Claudius, where the last defenders barricade themselves, is torn apart stone by stone. The archaeologists can still see the destruction layer today, a band of red ash and melted metal buried in the earth, a scar that never healed. But Boudica isn't finished. She turns toward Londinium, the merchant hub of Roman Britain. The governor, Suetonius Paulinus, evacuates the city. There's no time to defend it. He orders everyone who can walk to flee north with his legions. The rest are abandoned to their fate. Boudica's horde arrives and finds Londinium nearly empty. It doesn't matter. They burn it anyway. Then they march to Verulamium and burn that too. 3 cities, gone. In the span of weeks, Boudica has erased Rome's entire infrastructure in southern Britain. The death toll is staggering. The historian Tacitus puts it at 70,000 Romans and British collaborators, men, women, children, anyone who served Rome, anyone who profited from occupation. The rebels don't take prisoners, they don't take slaves, they take revenge. Emperor Nero, sitting in his palace in Rome, receives the reports and seriously considers abandoning Britain entirely. The island isn't worth this bloodshed, but Suetonius has other plans. He chooses his ground carefully, a narrow pass along Watling Street where Boudica's numerical advantage means nothing. The Britons charge with 100,000 warriors. The Romans stand with 10,000. It should be a massacre. It is, just not the one Boudica expected. Roman discipline shatters Celtic fury. The battle becomes a slaughter. When Boudica sees her army breaking, sees her people dying in the thousands, she makes a final choice. She takes poison. She will not be paraded through Rome in chains like Vercingetorix. Rome wins, Britain is saved, but the victory tastes like ash. They've kept the island, but the cost was catastrophic. The message is clear. You can conquer the Celts, but they will make you bleed for it. And some Celts, Rome will learn, cannot be conquered at all. North of Hadrian's Wall, in the mist-shrouded highlands of Caledonia, there are tribes that will never kneel. Not to Boudica's fury, not to Vercingetorix's brilliance. These are the Caledonians, and they fight with something more primal than strategy or rage. They fight with the land itself. Emperor Agricola marches north with his legions in 83 AD, determined to finish what decades of campaigns could not. At Mons Graupius he meets 30,000 Caledonian warriors led by a chieftain named Calgacus. The battle is brutal. Rome claims victory. 10,000 Caledonians dead. But here's the thing about Caledonian victories, they don't matter. Agricola marches back south. The highlands remain unconquered. The tribes melt back into the forests and glens. A year later, Agricola is recalled to Rome. His conquest evaporates like morning mist. The pattern repeats for decades. Rome advances, the Caledonians retreat. Rome declares victory, the Caledonians wait. Rome leaves, the Caledonians return. Finally, in 122 AD, Emperor Hadrian visits Britain personally. He looks at the reports, the casualties, the cost, the endless grinding futility of trying to conquer people who simply vanish when you advance and reappear when you leave. He makes a decision that will define his reign. He stops. He orders the construction of a massive stone wall, 80 miles long, stretching from coast to coast across the narrowest part of Britain, Hadrian's Wall. It's the most profound admission of defeat Rome has ever carved in stone. The empire that conquered the known world has built a monument to the simple fact that some people cannot be broken. For 300 years, Rome will rule southern Britain. For 300 years, Scotland will remain free. The Caledonians will watch from their highlands as empires rise and fall, beyond their borders, untouched, unconquered, unimpressed. But Rome's war with the Celts wasn't just about territory. It was about something deeper, something spiritual. 61 AD. The same year Boudica is burning cities in the south. General Suetonius Paulinus stands on the eastern shore of the Menai Strait, staring across the narrow channel of water at Anglesey Island. His mission is simple: destroy the last sanctuary of the Druids. His legionaries, men who faced Germanic berserkers and Parthian cataphracts, are frozen. They're staring at the opposite shore in something close to primal fear. The Druids stand in ranks wearing black robes, arms raised to the sky, voices chanting curses that seem to make the air itself vibrate with malevolence. Between them run Celtic women, hair wild and unbound, torches held high, screaming prophecies of Roman death in voices that scrape the inside of your skull. This is psychological warfare perfected over centuries. The Druids know that before you break a man's body, you break his mind. Paulinus watches his veterans hesitate. These are professional soldiers. They don't hesitate, but they're hesitating now. He gives the order anyway. The boats launch. The Romans crash onto the beach and the Druids meet them not with swords, but with certainty. They fight like men who know death is not an ending. The legionaries cut them down anyway. Discipline beats faith. Steel beats prophecy. The sacred groves are burned. The altars are smashed. The Druids are slaughtered, their bodies thrown into the sea. Paulinus reports back to Rome, mission accomplished. The spiritual heart of Celtic resistance has been ripped out. But here's what Rome never understood about killing priests. You can burn the temples, you can execute the holy men, you can scatter the ashes, but you cannot kill an idea with a sword. The Druidic traditions go underground. They're passed down in whispers, in secret groves, in the hearts of mothers teaching their children the old ways. A generation later, the beliefs resurface. 2 generations later, they're woven into the fabric of Celtic Christianity, hidden in plain sight. Rome won the island of Anglesey, but they lost the war for the Celtic soul, and that's the pattern that defines Rome's entire Celtic campaign. Victories that cost more than defeats, conquests that never quite stick, territory gained at a price that bankrupts the treasury and bleeds the legions dry. Let's talk about what the triumphal arches and victory columns don't tell you. Let's talk about what Rome actually paid for every mile of Celtic land. The Gallic Wars, 8 years of continuous combat. Caesar himself admits to killing 1 million Gauls and enslaving another million. But he doesn't mention how many Romans died. Historians estimate tens of thousands of legionaries never came home. Multiple legions were mauled so badly they had to be rebuilt from scratch. Caesar himself was nearly killed at least 3 times, once saved only because his personal bodyguard formed a living wall of shields around him. 8 years. For Gaul. A land that would rebel again the moment Rome's grip loosened. Britannia was worse. It required 4 emperors, multiple legions, and 40 years just to establish control of the southern half. And that control was always fragile, always contested, always expensive. The 9th Legion, one of Rome's most decorated units, simply vanished somewhere in the north. 5,000 men. Gone. The theories range from ambush to systematic guerrilla warfare, but the result is the same. An entire legion erased from existence. The financial cost was staggering. Maintaining the garrison in Britain drained the imperial treasury for 3 centuries. Hadrian's Wall alone required 15,000 permanent troops just to man it. That's 15,000 soldiers who could have been conquering Persia or securing the Rhine, instead standing watch against tribes that refused to be pacified. Germania was the nightmare that woke Rome screaming. In 9 AD, 3 entire legions marched into the Teutoburg forest. None marched out. 20,000 men slaughtered in a 3-day ambush by Germanic tribes, close cousins to the Celts. Emperor Augustus reportedly spent the rest of his life wandering his palace at night, beating his head against the walls and crying out, "Quintilius Verus, give me back my legions." The psychological damage was permanent. Rome never tried to conquer Germania again. This is what the history books sanitize. Rome didn't conquer the Celts through superiority. They conquered them through sheer, brutal, expensive persistence. They won through attrition, through generational warfare, through accepting losses that would have destroyed any other empire. The Celts lost, but they made Rome pay in blood, gold, and sanity for every single inch of ground. And here's the final beautiful irony. Rome won. They conquered Gaul. They occupied Britain. They built cities, roads, and walls across Celtic lands. They imposed their language, their laws, their gods. Then Rome fell. And the Celts? They're still here. When the legions withdrew, when the empire collapsed into chaos, something extraordinary happened. The Celtic languages resurged. The tribal identities re-emerged from the shadows. The cultural practices that Rome tried to erase came roaring back to life. Today, millions speak Celtic languages, Welsh in Wales, Gaelic in Scotland and Ireland, Breton in France. The music, the art, the mythology that Rome declared extinct are more vibrant now than Roman culture itself. You can visit the ruins of Roman Britain, empty stones overgrown with moss. But you can also visit living Celtic nations, where the languages Rome tried to kill are taught in schools, where the traditions Rome tried to burn are celebrated in festivals, where the identity Rome tried to erase is worn with fierce pride. The empire is dust. The Celts are eternal. Rome thought they were writing the final chapter of Celtic history. Instead, they were just writing one more story of resistance that the Celts would survive, absorb, and ultimately outlast. The conquerors became footnotes. The conquered became legends. And the tribes that refused to die? They're still refusing. Some spirits cannot be broken. Some fires cannot be extinguished. Some people, no matter how many times you defeat them, simply will not disappear. The Celts proved that empires are temporary, but defiance is forever.